of course, is not a performance. You know, so it's really, I think, quite clear, at least I'm trying to make it clear, that the art is like, it took place there, but not as art, and so it's actually taking place here. You see the kind of conceptual apparatus that I'm trying to figure out.
Like if you write about it into an historical context, and then going to method of practice, because this practice is used from non-visibility, you know. By framing them, you're already putting them into a sort of method to work, right?
Well, I am saying that they're eminently deserving of our attention. Yes. And you know, every light source will cast a shadow, right? So you have an attention economy, which the art world is one of the major vectors. Attention economics is how art functions, and of course that in that attention economy will cast those shadows. And these practices are, in a sense, shadow practices operating within those shadows. Well, there will always be shadows. We don't need to worry about that. But I think what is important is that this kind of superlative artistic energy and superlative human inventiveness not be lost, right? So I think there's two imperatives there. One is, of course, to respect the place where these are taking place, but the other thing is also to take a kind of responsibility to not allow the attention economy art world to have a monopoly on the definition of the word art.
Shadows will always exist too.
Yeah.
But I would have to worry about it.
No, but I mean, what I mean is, don't worry, there's practices that are happening all the time. I mean, we haven't recuperated, we haven't co-opted them yet.
Just worried about the guy that has the painting company.
Well,
These customers
30 years.
He probably will lose a lot of customers, for example, and his practice will go down the drain because he critique.
No, you know what, I don't think you need to worry about that. You know, I think maybe it would have been important to worry about that 29 years and 150 days ago. But by this point, you know, he's getting close to the retirement moment.
That's the right time to write it.
You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure that he would have thought it was a bad thing, but nobody. The paradox was, of course, that he was involved in the art world because he went there as an artist, and his friends were artists. You know, he was great friends with Mark Lombardi, who was at the time working in Houston. He painted Lombardi's apartment, so he was like really plugged into really cool artistic, but more mainstream practices. And they never understood what he was up to. They just thought, you're such a nice guy. You know, too bad you don't have more time for your painting. You know. But I'm not sure that he would have objected to, you know, someone saying, on the contrary, I think he'd be really happy. I think he'd be prepared to take a hit in terms of his profit margin for a kind of symbolic recognition and concept of service. But it's certainly a good point. I mean,
Paradox, because you're putting it into framing so that you not be framed anymore, so that you can
yeah,
see the way.
I like to think, though, that the frame, I mean, I like to think carefully about how I'm framing it. I'm trying to develop a certain conceptual vocabulary to make it, of course, anybody can frame it in any way, but I try to frame it in a specific way that tries to set it up in a certain way and in certain contexts. It isn't quite the same thing as, you know, taking apart like a wall out of his house, out of one that he's painted, you know, and bringing it and putting it into an art gallery. I saw this absolutely horrendous show of Gordon Clark's and architecture a couple of years ago at the Whitney. One of the worst exhibitions of one of the greatest artists of the contemporary period, because literally what they've done is that, you know, he cut these houses in half, and that they then went and, like, before the houses were actually demolished, they cut pieces off the house and then had brought these pieces of houses, you know, just everyday houses from New Jersey into the Whitney as the exhibition. You know, whereas what they should have done, of course, if they'd had the, you know, the courage is what I mean, is they would have cut the Whitney in half. You know? I mean, that's, you know, if they were interested in Gordon Clark's and architecture seriously, they would have figured out a way to, put their money where their mouth was. But no, they wanted to show those objects. It's for me absolutely catastrophic. And I think it was one of the things which I found most, not only least congenial in every way, but most antithetic to the performative document. By saying the performative document does not, cannot, should not, must not exist.
Det foregår nå testing av brannalarm.
The performance of Hilde Bruvold is starting now in Project Stoke, Kunstwerk. The measure to keep an eye on.
Taken by galleries.
Oh, for sure, yeah. No, obviously they were.
Det ikke påvist brann I bygget. Faren over og normaltilstand gjenopprettet.
So there had to be galleries involved in some of those purchases.
Yeah, although, I think in some cases he didn't actually purchase the land at all. The houses were condemned and were going to be destroyed, and he was given the authorization for a period of 6 weeks to...
Yeah, but I think in some cases there were galleries involved in some of the...
Det ikke påvist brann I bygget. Faren over og normaltilstand gjenopprettet.
We're not in the guise of an artwork, it's a wall or a partition for
No, absolutely. No, I mean, I can certainly see that. I mean, I see the dilemma because, of course, it's an attempt to square a circle, basically, by saying this is, they're confronted.
Det ikke påvist brann I bygget. Faren over og normaltilstand gjenopprettet.
Well, is it worse to have a photograph of the building, or is it worse to have a part of the building in the museum space? Is it bad to have it in the museum in the first place, or what is the critic?
It's not bad. I mean, we're talking about good and bad. We're talking about...
You're saying it's horrendous exhibition, or like it's...
Well, because I think the question is, what is most...
Det ikke påvist brann I bygget. Faren over og normaltilstand gjenopprettet.
And I would say something which cannot, that cannot look like it is the work. You could say the same thing for, one of the other sort of canonic concept pieces from those years is Vito Conchi's following piece, where very simple piece where he would simply follow someone when they emerged from private space into the public space in the street. He would follow them until they went back into private space. And sometimes it would be like, 10 meters, and sometimes it would be 100 blocks, but it didn't matter. And each time he would document that with a photograph. Well, these photographs, they were snapshots. I mean, they were absolutely blurry, no aesthetic qualities at all. They were really documents of a really weird, for the day, and incredibly interesting reflection on public and private space and so on. Well, a couple of years ago, I saw it in David's Furniture Gallery, all of them, behind glass, framed for $200,000. So you think, okay, well, 2,000, it's true that, maybe there's a kind of an erratic value, but $200,000, that's obviously the art right there. Whatever he did in the street, he could have done it the street was his studio, basically. He prepared the art, and that's the art. And for me, that requires such, a tiresome reconstruction in order to get back to what it was all about, that it's a bit.
Well, just like the mechanisms of the art world are quite ingenious because they manage to recuperate and reiterate anything in the gallery system if they want to. So none of these practices are immune to the reunification process.
No, nothing is immune to it, that's for sure. But what I was trying to suggest, or trying to propose, or trying to instantiate even, are alternatives to it.
Which again, many of the historical examples were again proposals to avoid or to come up with alternatives to this sort of reunification system. A lot of the examples you mentioned in your part as well.
For sure. Well, let me give you even one more example, but a totally different one and a very contemporary one. It just happens to be here. Well, this is one. That one's a good one, but not the one I'm thinking of. ARG. ARG is an absolutely amazing online archive of scanned and uploaded books, mostly theory books. About 20,000 of them now have been scanned and uploaded. You have to sign up in order to use it, but it's an absolutely fabulous resource. But what's interesting is that it was initiated by an artist, Sean Dockeray, but it's how can I say it? It's run, it's operated, it's made possible by a community of users. So it's based on usership. Because the guy who started it doesn't scan all the books and upload them himself. The people who are members, the users, do that. And then they organize that material in different ways, in different groups, in subgroups, in different. So it has also this double ontology, which I'm referring to. It is both what it is, absolutely fabulous, and for some of us, almost a crucial research tool and resource. And at the same time, it's a proposition of a resource. So I guess there's some way to reify something like this, even though it's constantly morphing in an uncontrolled way, in a sense, by the community. A large, but still limited community of people who use it. But for me, it's another one of these examples of the practices have a double ontology, and therefore, in that sense, kind of need to resist verification.
Reification, is that the word?
Yeah, well, re or res is the Latin for thing.
Oh, the thing.
Yeah, so it means thingification.
But the Goran Bordovich piece as well, the strike piece, that's his artwork, right? So that's distributed as his artwork.
No, it's in fact, it's the, he described, well, first of all, it's not, it exists in print form. It doesn't exist, the originals are not shown, so it's in like multiplicity. So it was actually printed in the journal Prelog, which is a avant-garde journal from Belgrade. He describes it as the last thing he ever did before leaving the art world forever. Because what Goran went on to do, but anonymously, was to create, in New York City, the Salon Fleury, and in Berlin, the Modern Museum of American Art, in which he uses the museum form, the performative frame of the museum, as sort of the meta framework for his artistic practice, but which he doesn't sign.
Walter Benjamin is the spokesperson.
Well, he's one of them, yeah. He's one of them. Absolutely fascinating project, one which is not associated directly with the name of Bordovich, who describes himself as the doorman. But if you're in Berlin, definitely something worth checking out. Or in Belgrade, because there's one in Belgrade as well.
They took part in exhibitions at the Panama as well, right?
That's right, exactly.
So, I mean, it's circulating and with those in the know.
It absolutely is circulating as a concept art. I guess you could call it an installation.
Yeah, I mean, it pops out in different constellations and reincarnations, but
He doesn't work with the LGB movement, does he? This drug language,
What's LGB?
lesbian, gay, and bisexual.
No, that wouldn't be his style.
No.
He has a kunsthistorisches mausoleum
Exactly.
in his flat in Belgrade.
In the basement.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's fantastic. It's a tiny little basement.
Absolutely extraordinary. And dank and damp, and it's got all these artwork. It's more of a cabinet de curiosité in a certain sense. And it's got all these oil paintings. Of course, they're all reproductions, relatively handily done. It's absolutely extraordinary experience.
Looks there was a.
But I wouldn't say that it doesn't have a double ontology. It really is more like an installation. It's a conceptual installation. But it's absolutely fascinating. It's super intelligent.
But this Irishman who made this book recently, The Ready-Mades. I mean, that's obviously referring to Duchamp, The Ready-Mades.
Yeah.
And
Duchamp did actually took the term ready-made itself.
from someone else,
Yes.
okay. But so this guy did the same thing, John Holton. He came to Oslo and he published a book called The Ready-Mades, and then these artists from Oslo who live in Brussels had him read from his book, The Ready-Mades, in a streaming video live, read through the whole book, The Ready-Mades. And The Ready-Mades, the book is about a group called the LGB, who he invented, and who are composed of non-existent Yugoslavian artists.
Oh, really?
And so you can look it up, and it's called The Ready-Mades, John Holton, and so they have exhibitions. This group that doesn't exist, I mean, the group that exists, but there are no people in it. Yeah, it's fiction. So it's a book, it's a novel, but it has documented exhibitions of artists and who are part of a group that are called the LGB, who might as well be the lesbian, gay, and bisexual community, you know, because it's like an undercurrent, an underground movement. You know, nobody knows, is he or is he not, is she or is she not, you know, he might be, she might be, you know. It's quite interesting. It could be anything. Could be anybody.
Okay, so I think there's lots of other activities that are awaiting our attention. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you.